Welcome to my series about all Frédéric Chopin's posthumous works. Yes, my friends, this beautiful, fantastic masterpiece was never published during Chopin's lifetime, and nobody knows why. Nocturne in E minor. We don't even know when exactly it was written. There are many different theories, and we can find many different sources saying that it was written in this year or another year, but nobody has any proof whatsoever. What can we read about this nocturne in Frédéric Chopin's Institute website, written by Professor Mieczysław Tomaszewski, a very famous Polish musicologist. He writes as follows, and I quote, "The Nocturne in E minor, published after the composer's death by Julian Fontana, one of Chopin's students, was deemed by him, by Julian Fontana, to be a work from Chopin's youth, from the year 1827. 1827 means Chopin was supposed to have 17 years when he wrote this piece. That date was taken as indisputable. However, Zdzisław Jachimecki, one of another Polish musicologist, wondered at this nocturne's delightful sound. Accepting Fontana's dating as secure, he could only conclude that he was dealing with a clear augury of the supreme master of the nocturnes, and that the ending of this nocturne sounded like a prophecy of the brilliant nocturne in C-sharp minor." He is talking about Nocturne in C-sharp minor, opus 27, number 1. Not the posthumous, of course. Nocturne, if you remember, opus 27, number 1, if you are watching me for a very long time, if you have watched all my journey through all the Chopin nocturnes, you remember maybe opus 27, those two nocturnes that are connected with another one, and the first one in C-sharp minor ends with major, and here we have a little bit the same thing. And later writes Professor Mieczysław Tomaszewski such words: "Tadeusz Zieliński ventured to question Fontana's dating, wondering if this was not in the fact the last of Chopin's nocturnes, not published for some unknown reason, but tending to indicate, with its emotional maturity and compositional excellence, we will talk about it later, the last years of Chopin's life and work." I think it might be closer to the truth, and I will try to prove it, but I have no proof. I only can prove it comparing the structure, emotions, and musical language and ideas to other Chopin's pieces. And in fact, we can guess quite a lot. We will do it together tonight. One is tempted to support that hypothesis by placing further question marks against the previously accepted date, writes Professor Mieczysław Tomaszewski. Careful listening to the E minor nocturne and a discerning awareness of its form, which we are going to talk about tonight, allow us to state that in some respects it is similar to the nocturne in E flat major, opus 55, number 2. Maybe you remember, it was the opera duet, love duet, and I was questioning some musicologists who didn't see any duet in this nocturne. They are quite similar, and Nocturne in E flat major, opus 55, is one of Chopin's last nocturnes. The question arises as to why Chopin did not publish the Nocturne in E minor. Well, the answer seems obvious, writes Professor Mieczysław Tomaszewski. Although it does possess irrefutable qualities, noted and appreciated by Chopin scholars, it cannot compare with the Nocturne in E-flat major. Secondly, it is too similar to the latter in many respects. Not in every respect, however. It is certainly more nostalgic than the E-flat major, written with less distance and, as Niemczuk put it, reflects a melancholy state of mind. Melancholy state of mind. Yes, melancholy state of mind. So this is a mystery. When was it written? And is it really that important? Well, maybe for just listening and for the music it's not that important. But if we want to go deeper into this music and try to understand emotional state of Chopin and of the composer who wrote any piece, actually, it's always better to know when it was written. Today we will not answer this question, but I will give some open questions to you, to each one of you, and we all can think about it, compare this piece to other pieces of Chopin, and decide whether it is a 17 years old Chopin, or maybe 20 years old Chopin, or maybe Chopin in his last years. To make it even more interesting and difficult to guess, I will read what I found in my edition, national edition, and the editor Jan Ekier writes: apart from the first posthumous edition, we have no historical testimony to the existence of this nocturne, dated by Julian Fontana, who prepared that edition at 1827. 1827, which means Chopin had 17 years. And Chopin was 17 years old. But, writes Jan Ekier, stylistic criteria, the harmonic substance, emotional depth, and facility in working with a uniform nocturne texture compel us to treat this date with caution. The work seems much more likely to have been written between 1828 and 1830. Well, only 1 year of difference and such a huge change? I'm not so convinced. I think this is a much later piece of music. Much later. For many reasons, sorry. So, now let's start our analysis of the structure and emotions. Well, the emotional analysis, it's very simple. Each one of you can do it easily yourself without any problems. It's enough to just close our eyes and listen, and then try to absorb the music and ask yourself a question: how do you feel? How do I feel when I hear the music? You know, this question is very important. I always show it to my students or master classes wherever I go. Some obvious thing that sometimes we don't think about. That, well, the music starts when the silence ends. So we have the silence and suddenly we hear the music. When we hear the music, we go into some state of mind. We feel something, always. Depends on what we hear. If we hear, we immediately feel drama, right? Or power. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. If we hear, for example, right, we feel something else. If we hear, we prefer the silence. And here, when we feel this is how Chopin starts this nocturne, from left hand alone, accompaniment. We have only the accompaniment. I love to compare this to the painting. And as a nocturne is a piece of night, the painting is also at night. So we have some painting, which we have night in this painting. And this is the fantastic way of painting with music, night. And there is something very special in this left hand. Do you know what? It's absolutely unbelievable. And this is the first thing that made me think that probably this is a late Chopin. When we have young Chopin writing his first nocturnes when he was in love with Konstancja Gładkowska, he didn't write such dissonances in the accompaniment. Everything is clear. A very similar accompaniment, but you know, it is 18 years old Chopin maybe. And now we have Chopin who is experimenting with the sound. Almost like Claude Debussy. Because it's like the painting when we have night. This is night. It's very dark. And then a painter, you know, is blaring like Claude Monet or other impressionistic artists. So we have this minor second that is making this left hand sound very sad, even maybe scary, a little mysterious. And that's the state of mind that we are in when we start to listen to this nocturne. And then when we have this night in the painting, suddenly, I love this comparison. On the painting there is maybe lighthouse or maybe full moon, something very light. And here we have the first note of the melody. And here comes the first challenge for the pianist. If the pianist is not so good, what we hear after this note, we hear the left hand. And then we hear again the right hand. But if the pianist is good, when you listen to the right hand, you should hear this note of the right hand all the way until the next note. And this is the first challenge because it means that the left hand has to be extremely soft, right? So it should be like because this is the singer, or this is the main theme. So after this night, we have light. Of course it should be piano, but still the proportions are very important so that we don't miss. Oh, now left hand is too much. So there is a big question of how to start this nocturne. It's not very easy piece of music. So the beginning is simply magic and quite sad. And now let's talk a little bit about the left hand. Left hand, as I told you, starts the piece, and we have these triplets: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And you know, from the beginning to the very end of the nocturne, the left hand will not change. We have always this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And in that idea, it's indeed very, very similar to this Nocturne in E flat major. So we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. We have the same idea. But here in this Nocturne, Chopin is much more generous for the left hand. Left hand is very rich. It's constantly changing and not so easy to memorize, you know, and changing all the time. But there is another Nocturne which, in my opinion, is extremely similar to this one, which is Nocturne in C sharp minor, opus 27, number 1, because it starts exactly from the left hand as well alone. We have the night, and then we have light. Right? It's a very beautiful piece of music as well. So maybe it's written close to this opus 27. We don't know that, but it's very similar idea. So the left hand is, as I said, all the time the same. It's only changing colors. And now let's focus on the structure of the piece, because the structure is very, very special, something that Chopin didn't really use in other pieces, and he never used such a structure in any of the nocturnes. So this is something new. And now I doubt that Chopin, being only 17 years old, could possibly think about something like that when it comes to the structure. So let's now analyze this. The first phrase and the first theme starts from the note which gives us immediately a sense of pressure, of some tension, I would say. Not really pressure, but a tension. Because if we had this, this is not a tension, because you know it's E, so we are in E minor, so we are at home. Here we start from the tension and then we continue, and we reach the first dissonance. So pain. And again, my friends, another comparison to opus 27. Opus 27 number 2 has exactly the same idea of constructing phrase. Listen. And now right, we talked about it. The minor second, and here we have the same idea. So maybe this is just the open question. And now we finally release. And then everything ends with a duet. In the thirds. Thirds means, well, when I was talking about mazurkas, I always was saying that thirds are two people, a couple that is close to each other. So, and that's how ends the first phrase. And then we have consequent phrase, which is completely different. This is another reason why I don't think Chopin was only 17 years old. You know, 16 years old Chopin, Rondo Opus 1, we have a very regular phrases. And again the same thing. And so on. Here we have a completely different melody. We have a duet, two voices, and listen. And it's growing until again we have the second. So again we have pain, we have a lot of tension. And release. So energetically it is constructed in a perfect way of creating the tension and releasing the tension, creating the tension and releasing. And this is the first musical period. Then this musical period is repeated one more time, and again we have Experiment written by Chopin. Only the first phrase of this musical period will be the same. The second will be very different, will be prolonged, will be twice as long, and will bring us to this beautiful middle part when we are happy. We feel happy because we are in major key. So now let's listen to the whole first part and try to understand this fantastic structure. Released and duet. Consequent phrase and duet continues. We are reaching the climax. More, and until here. And first phrase is repeated with octaves in the right hand. A little variation. It should be this what we had. Instead, we have something completely new. Listen, but still the duet, two voices, continues. And from here we start to grow. Suddenly we have B major. So it is fantastically written. If you listen to this for the first time, you are constantly surprised. You are surprised every single bar or every two bars. There is something new. Then where does it go? It grows. Then it reaches this. But we don't release. We are more and more. So much time to release, right? And suddenly we are in B major. And B major, B major in Chopin's music is the key of love, of beautiful melodies, beautiful, fantastic melodies. Right, or Nocturne, Opus 62. Always something about love. We feel good. We feel comforted. And this is the same. We are in B major. In the left hand we have no minor seconds. Everything is very consonant, very beautiful. And then we have the duet, two people. So maybe a dream about love. Repeat it. And what we have next, it is so short. And everything comes back to the beginning. So it's too short to be part B of the Nocturne. A Nocturne, you know, all the Nocturnes of early Chopin, we had a very long part B. Long. Here it is only one phrase. So it's not part B. It's maybe the second theme. But Chopin comes back to part A, which is very completely different. We will have variations. And this is a proof that this Nocturne is a story. Because after what happened, after this, maybe dream about love or something beautiful, the first theme is changing. So the first theme changed because of what happened before. And how did it change? We have a fantastic, very innovative variations. Chopin never wrote such variations in any of the Nocturnes. I don't know, and I know all of them. This variation is so far away from the original, but still it is a variation of the first theme. So the first theme you remembered, right? So now listen to the first phrase of this variation and focus on how much recitative it is. Recitativo-like. Very much. And a lot of drama. Everything is forte. So we are screaming. And now the second phrase, consequent phrase. Do you remember how did it sound? It was this. Now here we have something which is completely different, but only if you don't know the lower voice of this consequent phrase, because as I told you, it is a duet, and the consequent phrase, lower voice, sounds like this. And my friends, this what we will hear is the variation of this lower voice. Listen. So it is really fascinating. It is so hidden that it's absolutely amazing. So the upper voice is gone. Only lower voice stays and is answering this. Maybe upper voice was so shouting, was so angry or dramatic, and now the answer is from the lower voice. And continuation. And then, just like at the beginning, we have octaves and the first phrase. Now, what was at the beginning? We had this. Do you remember this long phrase that brought us to B major? Here we have a completely new 4 bars of transition to E major, to the second theme, which will conclude the whole piece. So the second theme again. So again we have B. So this is like A, B, A, B in a way. So let's listen to this transition. And we are in E major, and now this phrase is in the love phrase. E major ends the whole nocturne. So everything ends in major, optimistically. So that's so beautiful and so touching that even such a deep sadness like we started with this nocturne can end with a love, and the love can change sadness into happiness. That's how fantastic this piece is. And now let's go on a trip throughout this piece one more time so that we understand its structure and emotions. and dreaming about something beautiful. Happiness. Falling asleep. So that's how it is. Very special piece of music. Thank you very much for watching, and see you again in my next videos. Bye bye.